So Ken Martel is technical director for hockey, focused on this ADM area especially, and this should be fun.
Thanks, John. Well, I am like Tom. I'm a recovering coach. So I steal things when I see something good, and we try and put it into play, like everybody else. My background, coached college for a while, was a U.S. national team coach for a long time, and now I do this for USA Hockey and our organization. But so that you know, I sit on our local Youth Hockey Association board. I'm a volunteer, and I coach a 12-year-old hockey team in my local youth program because it's good experience for me to see what's going on in my day job, you know, what we all experience. Tom alluded to this when he first started. Our sport, the technical skills in our sports are different, but how kids grow, learn, and how we set up clubs, and it's the same. The more we do, the more I get excited every time I get to come. I just have 5 or 6 new things from Tom that I'm going to take back. Every time I get around these guys and our other NGBs and sports, we tend to learn some good things from each other. So we really like the sharing that goes on. With my presentation, I think I broke every rule on presentations. It's going to be overly wordy, too many slides, not as condensed. I didn't have as many nice pictures as Tom had in his and was able to steal. And no clicker too, so you know I'm really apologize. So like Tom, I kind of took a step back and said, well, what is USA Hockey? What does a hockey club and a volleyball club have in common? Well, we're both team sports, team club sports, and you can play both sports for a long time. Well into my age. Like I still get in the ice with my buddies and we go play lunch hockey. And these are good things for our sports because we're registered and we have members at all levels. Tom, I'm sorry, but watching the tiles go by on the bottom of the pool just isn't all that exciting for me. So I have a hard time with jumping in and doing laps. But volleyball is something that I could get into. It's, again, team social. Lots of good things to draw kids into your game. We too have 3 types of clubs in our club structure. We have our volunteer youth board. That's about 60% of our clubs. We have about 2,000 clubs around the country. And we see that those club boards turn over every 6 years, right? Just as the people come in, they volunteer to help out because their kids are there, and then they tend to move on. Then we have our rink run programs. These are the facilities themselves. They tend to be a little bit more stable and sometimes a little bit more professional because there's somebody there that's looking after the business day in, day out because they have to sell ice. We are a very facilities-driven sport, especially in the, non-traditional areas in our country. California is our largest growing hockey area in the country right now, and without artificial ice and ice arenas, we don't have a sport there. Volleyball, you're really fortunate. You can string a line, as John has shown us, anywhere, and you can play. So, we have a little issue with that, but we look at all forms of hockey as being a good thing, whether it's roller, street, boot hockey, floor ball, whatever, anything with a stick and a ball or a stick and a puck we're kind of happy with. So we use all those for our recruitment processes. Our club sizes, 50% of our clubs are under 200 members. The other 50% are over 200 members, with the high being a 1,600 member club. We have several that are over 1,000. My club that I deal with in Colorado Springs, we have over 650 kids that are in our club. We have 3 full-time paid people that are working in our youth club that myself as a board member help oversee. So USA Hockey, we had some major changes that we've asked our clubs to undertake. About 6-7 years ago, we started down this path of sort of a self-evaluation. From 1990 to 2001, USA Hockey doubled in size. doubled in the number of kids that were playing the sport. Huge, rapid, massive growth, lots of rinks being built around the country. And we became a little bit of sort of absentee owners a bit, and we were just really happy as an organization, as a national governing body, that membership was growing. And we stopped paying as close attention as we probably should have. So between 2002 and 2008, we dropped about 50,000 male youth players in our sport. We were growing, still growing, so higher ups, our bosses and our board, they're all happy. All they look is we're growing as a sport. It was in adult and girls hockey, which is fantastic because we want more people to play. But for us, core business is still going to be, boys youth hockey. We look at numbers. That was a huge hit. And we kind of said, okay, well, wait a second, what's going on? And we did a real kind of critical self-evaluation as an organization. And then we made some changes, and we'll talk about that. So this presentation is going to fall into 4 boxes. Box number 1 is, what was the NGB looking at, which might be a lot different than what you as clubs are looking at. What changes did we make? And then, what were some of the results that we're seeing 6, 7 years later? And then a little bit back to your roles. We have hockey directors that are our club directors, would be something like your head coach in your organizations. And we run a 4-day hockey director training program. And I pulled a little bit of some of the general things out of that we think are important. Probably not as granular as Tom, but to give you an idea of what we're trying to focus our clubs to key in on for kids to be happy, kids to play, grow your sport, and develop more good players. We're lucky when you look at this, the logo up here, proud partners in hockey. We have Big Brother in our sport, the National Hockey League, and we're very fortunate because they do give us some financial resources, some media resources, and those things to help grow the sport. Because the organizations, we have 2 mutual long-term goals. One is to have more American kids play ice hockey, and the other is to have more American kids play ice hockey really, really well. The NHL is a global league. Best players in the world play in the league, but for, say, the Columbus Blue Jackets, there's nothing better than having an American kid that maybe played at Ohio State University come through and be on their team versus somebody from, Victor Feliknikov from wherever, right? And what's really cool for us as a sport is we now have California born and raised players that have played for the LA Kings, the Anaheim Ducks, the San Jose Sharks. We've had a Nashville born and raised player play for the Nashville Predators. We got kids from Texas, from Florida, and all this. All our warm weather states that are progressing and doing really well. So we're pretty happy about all that. Clicker, I guess. How do we do this? Okay, so. Yeah, we're at 26% right now. Canada's about 49 right now. They've dropped under 50%, and the rest of the globe makes up the rest. Over the last 10 years, we've gained at about 10% in the league. We were about 15% about 10 years ago. We're gaining, Canada's losing, and Europe is staying the same. And if you look at what's coming up through the pipeline, we're doing really, really well. We just won the Youth Olympic Games last month with our 15-year-olds, and we didn't have our best 15-year-olds, at least who was there. Now, that's kind of a misnomer because in our sport, most of those kids at 15 won't be around later on at the elite level. The turnover, we're a late development sport. Just there's too many things going to happen. And if you take a step back and you look at the NHL, they do their draft at 18 and 19 years of age, and 17% of the league is still undrafted. So 1 out of every 6 players that are on the ice skating at all times are undrafted. And it just, as human beings, we grow and develop and change, and it's one of the things that we try and always instill in our coaches is more patience. Patience with your kids. And I'll show some slides on it. So what we figured out is we were winning the race to the wrong finish line in our sport. We were trying to do things earlier and earlier and earlier, ramping things up way too soon. Not as much fun for the kids. We were losing membership. Kids were wandering away. What happens with players? They're not happy. They vote with their feet. They just walk away. They go someplace else. So for us, looking at, these are the countries that played in the last Olympics for us. And as you can see here, the United States, we have, if you look at the development system, we're now the #2 most populated hockey country in the world in terms of youth players. Yet we get slaughtered by Finland, who is down here. They beat us in the bronze medal game very handily. You know, you kind of take a step back and go, wow, you know, their resources, the number of rinks, what are they doing that we're not? And we're fortunate we've got some good relationships with some of our other countries. But, you know, when our women play Canada in the gold medal game every time, well, we should. If we're not there, something's wrong. I mean, seriously, where's the support system? And for us, and I joke with my Minnesota friends, but literally, if they were their own country, they'd be the 4th largest hockey playing country in the world, right? But they can't produce an Olympic team to compete with Finland, the Czech Republic, and they have more players, more resources, more things at their disposal. So what's going on? And talked about this before, it's really kind of patience with everybody. So next slide there, John. Oh, it's not playing. If you know much about our sport, watch this.
From their guard.
Watch the replay.
Alexander Ovechkin, when it looked like it was no longer possible.
Overhead scoreboard to just take a second look. His tongue's hanging like Michael Jordan. He drags it to the inside, to the backhand. On his back, one hand on his stick, and he corrals.
That was deliberately done. But does anyone here think that he practiced that? Right? No. You talk to Alex, not every, you know, but gymnastics as a kid, played basketball, did a lot of different sports. His kinesthetic awareness is really quite high. So when we look at our sport, we say, okay, well, you know, and we go back and we look at how our players reach the elite level. Here, we're fortunate because Canada's right next door and hockey's very popular in their country, so they do a lot of research on our sport that we can tap into. And if you look at the playing histories of kids that actually turn out to be elite level players, it's right here is practices and games, and right here is, you know, other sports and deliberate play. And so they're doing all these other things away from the ice rink. And then when they get to 14, 15, they start to specialize a little bit in our sport. Those other things cut down. And that's the path on how players make it to the elite level, for the most part, in the sport of ice hockey. So, but that's not what our youth sport clubs were selling. They're selling, get in, deliberate practice, and we got to train you from 9 years old to be this superstar, and no fun. Kids are leaving, and they're not turning out that way anyway. We just redid the study again with our Olympic team, and every single one of the 46 players that tried out for our Olympic team was a late specialization kid. The earliest age that they said, oh yeah, I just started playing predominantly ice hockey was 13. So anyway, next, please. All right, so we've also had a 17-year, or 20, almost 20 years now, experiment going on. We have 2 standing teenage national teams at 16 and 17. We did this a long time ago. It's been very, very successful, but we also learned a whole lot of things. I coached in the program for the first 8 years, and I can tell you we did a lot of things wrong. Because as a college coach, and the other coaches that were there were professional coaches, and we were used to dealing with a much older athlete. and yet we tried to treat them a little bit too much like pros versus the kids that they really were. And once we made some adjustments, all of a sudden, much more success, better kids turning out, better adjusted kids, the whole thing. So what we learned, though, was we need to treat kids at each age appropriately. So one of the other things we got going wrong in our culture, and I don't know what the elite level of volleyball is, but in the state of Illinois, for example, they were paring down the entire state into 4 teams at 9, 10 years old. 10 years old. Trying to recruit, because we're the super team, you know. Got sponsors, got all this, right? And then 5 years later, this is the typical data. Well, 63% still play the sport, 36 don't even play anymore, and then only 19% are still sort of playing at that level, and they're not the best players. So when you look at this league, and it's a national league at the older level, you know, where did the kids come from and what were their paths and trajectories to get there? Well, you know, they all did something else, you know, so it wasn't this elite push at an early age that was going to help them. So as an NGB, we look at these things and we say, okay, well, how are we handling it and what adjustments we're going to make? And for us, I love the sign, no average 9-year-olds allowed, right? That's us. So what's our structure really developing? Not much. Next, there we go. So, and again, late developers. These are guys that were on our last Olympic team, and they were 100% of the players were multi-sport athletes, but at 15, nobody thought any of these players were remotely going to be good in the sport. And this player right here, he's leading the NHL in scoring right now. He's probably the best, most gifted offensive, most creative player in the world right now. And at those young ages, I remember watching him, he was a decent player, but there's no way anybody thought he would do what he's doing. And patience. Next, please. So our friends in Finland thought this was pretty good. We got this information from them. They've done some studies, and for them, 15 hours a week of physical activity for kids, just for basic fitness. 20 hours a week, you might have a chance to be a professional athlete, and 30 hours a week, you might have a chance to be an Olympian. Next slide. And I threw this one in there because I don't know, do you guys know this player? Anyone on your national staff? He's on their national teams for volleyball. This was a representative sample of different athletes. I certainly know these 2 brothers because this one right here played for me in college, and long NHL career. But this is what they're shooting for, and it's 30 hours. And here are the different sports of what they were playing in organized sport at 12 to 14 years of age, and still other things, other physical activities, and what they were doing away from just playing your sport. So thought that was interesting. So what did we do? We looked at all this data. We said we were losing kids. We're not operating right. It's not the pathway even for the ones that want to be good. So what did we do? So we created our sort of American development model based on some principles in development, things that have been around in education for a very long time. We were just really, really slow to apply it to our sport. So it's age-appropriate competition and training for kids. Next, please. This is a philosophical message from our organization. players to be really good in our sport, we know that we can't do everything they need just coming to ice hockey. They need to go play volleyball. They need to go to swim lessons. They need to do all these other things. And we're big enough boys and girls in our organization to go, you know what, if swimming or volleyball ends up being their passion, fantastic. We use this tagline right here, play, love, excel. We want to get our kids in. We want them to play. We want them to learn to love the sport, because we know that if they don't truly love it, they're never really going to put the time in long term to excel. So if a kid comes in and plays ice hockey and has a good time with it and decides that, you know what, I just like volleyball better or like something else better, fantastic. Go chase your dream. Do what you're going to do. But we have a sport that they can come back to and hopefully play lifelong. So philosophically, sometimes taking a step back has allowed us to maybe be a better youth sports organization, where you see a lot of programs, they get their kids in and then they try and squeeze them dry and there's nothing left. You know, even our pro players don't play year round. You can't go year round. You need to take a break. You need to do other things. Doesn't mean that we don't want you being involved in ice hockey, but we take a little bit broader view with it, and I think it's been really important for us.
And Tom alluded to this, and the first time I heard this was at an Olympic Congress, which they don't really do anymore, but USA Baseball was pointing out that, you know, with the numbers of kids that aren't in organized sports, out of the 60 million kids, it's like 20 million are involved and 40 million aren't. When a kid chooses another sport, celebrate it, that they're staying active, and go find the 40 million kids that aren't being active and get them to come out and be more active in some way, shape, or form. And not what I see often in volleyball clubs, either they stole my player to another club, or basketball stole my player type stuff. And that's just not what you're hearing, what we see at the highest level. We just want to get those other kids involved. And there's a big project. Are you going to refer to the Project Play stuff, or if you can, reference it?
Yeah, somebody has is this yours that you brought? So the Aspen Institute did a 2-year study on youth sport and tried to, look at all the issues and then come up with viable solutions that we can run with. And, you know, the three of us have all been, you know, a part of this program, and I think it's bringing awareness to some of the issues, because our youth sport culture is a little out of whack in our country. And it's not a hockey issue, it's not a swimming issue, it's not a volleyball issue, it's a youth sport issue. So soccer, baseball, etc.
For when you leave this session this afternoon, head over to designtomove.org, where they've got a couple fabulous downloads that you can share with parents and your school board and things like that about this project. And we'll see some stuff. We're meeting in May in Washington, D.C., and the three of us are on a sports sampling thing. And tomorrow, Brendan's going to be going to represent, because I'm headed to overseas, and Ken's got a thing on a project that they're doing with sports sampling at the Cheyenne Mountain High School to get these kids to do more sports sampling and not just start volleyball at 10 and only play volleyball, because of the stuff you're seeing up here. That's really important.
So our goal is to make hockey so much fun that the kids are going, Mom, Dad, I got to go back. I got to go back. That's our job. And at the end of the day, if we do that, and, you know, I think John referenced some of the U.S. Olympic studies, and you look at our Olympians and what they said about their youth coaches, and they made it fun for them. So that's what we're trying to do, and we'll show you some of our numbers are. We're growing as a team youth sport, which there aren't many out there that are growing. But one of the first things we did was kid size our playing environment. I mean, we had 6-year-olds playing on the same size ice surface, trying to do the same things as the NHL guys over here, you know, at the Pepsi Center. I mean, not rocket science here, but you would. Oh yeah, it's real hockey, you know. So and we have our issues, you know, I mean, because anytime you say you put a rule in, you know, you're going to have a competitor jump up and say, well, argue against it. But, you know, pretty common in all sports. I'm sure you guys were really much more intelligent and moved your net a little bit lower, at least for your littlest kids. Mhm. Yeah, and then we've also had a 20-year experiment going on with that program in it. Well, he's done some stuff in ice hockey. He's a Canadian who's actually, you know.
And Johnson Mella, Jean Cote.
Yeah. Those are guys that have done a lot in our sport because.
I'm very much interested to know what were the issues you guys found for the talent retention, primarily with the dropout.
Mm-hmm. We'll get to our dropout rates.
Yeah,
and show you
because
some of that.
I think there's a big commonality there, and that relates
Yeah.
to swimming as well, because there's a huge dropout rate in the older ages, and that would be huge for volleyball. So I really
We're going to show you some dropout rates and those things.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
So for us, all we did was turn the playing surface sideways, so we could have one game here, and one game going on there. You know, again, not rocket science, but the pushback we still have in some areas on this, we're probably about 90% compliant now across the country. You know, and we're fortunate as an NGB because 95% of all players that play hockey in the United States are registered through USA Hockey, so we can track people. We're a little sneaky about things because we know what clubs kids play in. We know when they change clubs. We know what clubs are doing a good job of retaining players. We know what clubs are doing, who's stealing players from somebody else and saying we do a really good job of development, right? So we have some interesting data that we're being able to collect now on our clubs, and we're changing our registration a little bit now too to be able to tie in the player to the coach. So in a few years, our coaches I don't think know this yet, but in a few years we'll know what coaches are retaining players, individual coaches versus, so should be some interesting data down the road. We also improved our practice environment, you know, more repetitions, more live action, more game-like, fun things for kids. We play a lot more small games in our practices for our kids because we're an open-ended sport. You know, you can't block your training and expect them to be able to execute very well when they get into the live game. So some things that were going on there. And then yeah. Right now, it's 9, which is still way too soon. But we made some political concessions because we would have we had a mutiny on our hands when we made the change to begin with. Now everybody's seen it and it's like, oh, no problem. This is kind of what we do now. So it's being, like I said, 90% of the country on board and things are going well. And we're now having people come back to us and say, well, geez, this is too big for the 9-year-olds. Maybe they should just be playing half ice. And we're like, aha. So we will move to that, but we can't. It's like having the nice tablecloth. As an NGB, we got this really beautiful table setting, and sometimes you got to reach in and you grab the tablecloth and yank it out without having everything go completely crazy. So a compromise was built in. Because we have 100, and like this year we're 110,000 kids under the age of 8 playing ice hockey.
So I don't know about swimming actually, but you may not know that 8 and under volleyball registration costs are free at a regional level. And some regions may not choose to do that, but at the national level we promote free membership, and 11 and under is a maximum of $15 a year. The idea came from these guys because your 6 and unders have how many members? 55,000 or something like that. And they're 6 and under, which is a free membership. They have 55,000 members just in that age group alone.
The single greatest thing we do, I think, as an organization is we send every kid that plays a magazine in the mail. It's a kids magazine, and it's the largest hockey publication in the world, and it's geared towards the kids. And I know that we're a digital society and everything's online and all this, but little kids, when they get something like that in the mail, they read it cover to cover. The parents, there's things in there for the parents. It's hugely popular. It's built into our membership, and it is the best communication piece we have going because kids just, they can't wait to get it.
Three very important messages we're getting so far is the importance of the multi-sport program for the kids to decide what's going to be their careers.
Yep.
I think we got a strong message from your graphic, your research that might be extensive on the age of 15, 16 as a watershed for commitment. And
actually, we commit, our kids commit a little earlier.
Literally, but it's the notion of the early initiation and late specialization.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Early participation, late specialization.
And most importantly, the lifelong, the longevity, not only of the player, but of the activity to be a lifelong alternative for people to be physically active. So
we are, the fastest growing segment we have is our adult program, and we are almost 200,000 adult players now, and I would say 10 years ago we were probably 50,000 adult players. So it's good. Is there a question?
When you switched to smaller arena, how did you do it officially, like competition? Oh.
Just the standard playing surface size for, you know, kids 8 and under is cross ice or half ice, depending on the size of your facility, because not every ice rink surface is built the same way. But we just give them flexibility to be half ice or cross ice.
Okay, but how did you incorporate that in your sanctioned tournament? How did you incorporate that into your sanctioned tournaments? Did it start regionally and then you spread it out?
We just made the rule.
You guys nationally made the rule.
Made the rule.
Went.
Yep. And so here's the other side too, like insurance. We are, you know, we don't like to promote that we're a big insurance carrier, but we are. Every kid that plays, every coach, we insure them. And so if you're going to play in some other deal, then you're not insured. And since everybody's registered with us, it's easy, but it's not easy. You know, we just said, look, this is what we're doing, and people know if they're in the building and kids are that age and not playing the right thing, then, you know, there's repercussions for the organization. You know, if your 8U coach gets off the rails and decides he's going to do something, well, you might have in your club, you might have an 18U national tournament bound team that might not get to go to nationals. Well, next thing you know, the club's a little bit, you know, it polices itself fairly well, and you know, but we have our pockets of resistance. We have the North Shore of Illinois, some very wealthy suburbs. They're community-owned rinks. They're single-sheet facilities that are charging almost $4,000 to play ice hockey at 8 and under. All right? And they're community park and rec run facilities that somebody's making a whole lot of money on. That, I don't know, if I'm a taxpayer there, I'm a little upset because I'm paying for the rink through my taxes and everything else. My club here in Colorado Springs, our ice costs are about the same as what theirs are in Chicago. It's $350 for the year. And we probably give them more programming and more. And the sole reason they haven't gone to this is because the guys running it go, well, we can't charge $4,000 if we play the other way. So it has nothing to do about the kids, nothing about their development, and they're really fortunate right now because the Chicago Blackhawks are very hot in the NHL, so there's a draw and people are coming out and they can fill their rink. But that's one of 2 problem areas in the country. It's 17 rinks on the North Shore.
I have a question, John. When are we going to get this in volleyball so we don't have to The question is, when are we going to get this continuity in volleyball so we don't have NFHS rules and USA volleyball rules that we all, quite honestly, if you coach both, I forget all the time, which is what.
Well, so are your NHL rules and USA hockey rules and high school rules the same? I
No.
don't think they are.
No, USA. So there's a USA hockey rule book for all of our kids. There's a USA Hockey Junior rule book for a category that's basically 18, 19, and 20 years of age. The NCAA has a rule book that is in place. The National High School Federation of Sports has a rule book, and the International Ice Hockey Federation has a rule book, and the National Hockey League has a rule book.
So they're worse than we are.
Playing rules. Yeah. Yeah. And I can't keep them track either. I mean, but for us, the good thing is all the kids coming up through the system, they play under our rules. And I mean, we have some different rules than the National Hockey League because it's not sports entertainment. Like we have some rules in play that are actually old NHL rules, but they force kids to play the game a little bit more the right way. They force them to hang on to the puck instead of just throw it away. So we like those things. We like being different because the NHL, we're on the clock and it has to fit within the TV block and, it's got to be. So we do some things and have some rules in place for development, like our playing surface size. Makes better sense for the kids.
So I don't know, how many NHL rinks are there of all your sheets? Is it 10% are NHL size?
Here in North America, it's probably 90% are, well, let's back up. About 80% are regulation NHL size. You probably have 10% that are funky, fit into an old warehouse or whatever. They squeeze the rink in. And then you have another 10% that are international Olympic size. Olympic is a little bit bigger.
And so down in the Springs, we have one Olympic sheet, right? And that's it?
Two.
We have two sheets down there.
Two Olympic. You have 5 regular.
NHL.
3 regulation and 2 that are funky size.
Okay. So on the bigger rinks, what do you do differently for this? Nothing?
We just cross ice.
Okay. So they just have a longer skate.
It's 15 feet wider. Okay. Which, you can't modify the surface that much. I mean, we put up some boards and stuff and we can do some things, but it is sort of what it is a bit.
This next slide intrigues me.
Mm-hmm. So we eliminated our 12 and under national championship because it made absolutely no sense and it was unbelievably hypocritical for us to run a national championship, an event where we're encouraging people to get super teams together and things at these young ages that really don't plan out. We laugh, but like Little League has their World Series and they sell the heck out of it. But we have more NHL hockey players that have played in the Little League World Series championship than they have Major League Baseball players. Honest to God, it's truth. More NHL pro players that have played in the Little League World Series than baseball's got. So at these ages, why are we doing it? And for us, it would be unbelievably hypocritical of us to do those events. But I mean, AAU's out there and they're running 8-year-old national championships and 6-year-old national championships, because it makes money.
Yeah.
You can sell it to somebody, but it's not the right thing. So as an NGB, can't be hypocritical.
I couldn't be happier to be here. I call all of my coaches to come, 3 of my board members, and I'm a good friend with John. John, you're a brilliant man, and this is so important for our reflection for our sport because there's nothing wrong that the rules are different. As a matter of fact, they should be standardized to be different because we have children, different stages, growing, participating in different sports. We still have soccer, who gets a whole different philosophy. It's in this equation. And I think that we should develop our own rules in connection to our leaders in our sports to see what makes sense. I know we have the answers for a lot of other things. For instance, in volleyball, it's tough, but John has several videos about how to get the net lower, how to design the. It's a matter of a political interest for us to have 4v4, 5v5, 3v3, and so on. The other thing that I want to share is we do need to read more and perhaps develop the research, in this case of volleyball, what is the expertise model development for volleyball in the United States and how that would benefit our clubs and our children the most. So thank you, John, for putting this together.
And I agree with what you're saying, but I kind of see USA Volleyball going the other direction, adding more divisions because of the money. Each year it gets bigger and bigger, at nationals. But I was recently talking to a college coach, and he said he traveled in Europe, and he said at 12 and under, 13 and under, they did not serve. Coaches put the ball in play so that kids learned the game versus just serving people off the court. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
The expertise development volleyball in Brazil, Russia, many other countries. And I found that in our reality in the United States, I'm an American by option. And what happened is developmentally appropriate sports all over the world, it's the common sense. Like in Brazil, they have 7 net heights. They cannot do jump serve until they are 15. They have to do underhand serve age 12, 13. Overhead serve 13, 14. And when they are 16, they play with the adults net height. That would be very difficult to do here, but possible. So we need to rethink the way we conceptualize teaching, learning, multi-sports. And again, thanks so much for you guys to putting this together.
Well, in our sport too, the other thing we've done is the puck that the little kids use is lighter. In our sport, one of the monumental milestones for a little kid is when he can shoot and lift the puck off the ice. But a normal sized puck that the NHL guys are using, it's not hugely, it's a couple ounces, heavier. But for a little kid, they learn the wrong technique to shoot because they still want to lift the puck. So now they actually go through the proper range of motion with the lighter puck to learn the technique a little bit better, and they'll get the strength later on. But you got to put yourself back in what the kids' minds are and what they really want to do with the sport. And kids, I swear, even our 12-year-olds that I coach, they think that if they score in the top half of the net, that counts more than if they score on the bottom half. That's big for them. They want to go bar down. I think that's best. We modified our body checking rules. We had some really good research that went on, and we moved the initial start of body checking from it was at 11, now it's at 13, and we're doing I have a really cool research project that starting hopefully here in a few months in our new facility in Plymouth, Michigan with our national team program. We're going to track kids at a bunch of different ages, and we have some really high-end technology that's going into our building to get some more data, and we may move that up as well, but we have to base it on some facts, not opinions,
And I shared, and I'll reshare it with this group. The NHL has the GPS units or whatever you put on the kids. You probably can pull them out of your brain unless they're later on in the presentation. The way the cross ice increased the contacts with the puck by 300%, and these numbers, do you know them off the top of your head?
It basically doubles the contact situations where they're going to bump into each other a little bit. 5 times more shots are taking place. They handle the puck 3 times more. All the different technical skills that they get to work on in the competition just happen more often. But we have that technology going. We just bought a new training complex for our national teams. It's a 2-sheet facility in Plymouth, Michigan. And we have that RF technology going into our building this next week. And we will take that and we will track every single age group There's some really cool things. It takes about 8 million data points a game, tracks the puck, tracks the players. We can tell accelerations, decelerations, skating speeds, all kinds of statistics. We're actually, you guys, I don't know if you guys were using, are you guys, anyone using that Zephyr technology and bio? You're probably less heart rate variability and
We've got a vertical thing that
yeah, this can do.
number of jumps and the height of jumps and the way the jump durates over the practice.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, there's a sensor that's being used. The military's using it. Some high-end sports teams, a little on the pricey side right now for youth sport, but we're going to put that on everybody, and it takes everything from your heart rate variability, your ventilation rate. So your breathing, it has three-dimensional accelerometer. It can track your vertical jump. It can track, well, for us, body contact. All these types of things. We're going to put those on every age kid and let them go and track an entire season and some really cool stuff. But so again, if as an NGB we're going to make changes, have to base things on facts, not opinions. So the other thing we did was we changed our coach education program massively because they are the first line of delivery in what we're doing with our kids. And we had already had, we made changes about 12, 13 years ago now to a mandatory coach education program. It was probably more of a coach certification than it was true education, because how much do you really get out of a single day class or a 2-day class? You get something, but it's not real coach education. But what it's done is at least it got everybody on board. We have about 60,000 coaches in our program. We do about 30,000 coaches a year. And then what we added was these online modules. They're about 8 hours to take, 7 hours to take start to finish. And they have everything, and it's that you would think of, whether it's sleep, whether it's, some nutrition, it's got practice planning, it's got some game strategies, everything that would go into coaching for 8 and under. There's one for 10 and under, there's one for 12 and under, there's one for 14 and under, there's one for 16. So it's based on the age group that you coach. And obviously there's more of certain topics at certain ages, right? So that's been put in place. It's been very well received. I mean, we've got, one of my best comments is, so Nelson Emerson is the Director of Player Development for the Los Angeles Kings. And he called me up and said, hey, Ken, I think it's a little BS that I have to go and take this because I do this for a living. And then he took everything and he said, you know what? I learned a ton because dealing with my kid's 8-year-old team or 10-year-old team is nothing like what I do in my day job working with professional athletes, not even remotely. He goes, they're so good that I think that anyone that's going to coach my kid had better take that. And if you have a problem with anybody, you give them my number, have them call me. So if people like that are being able to look at it, we know we've got a decent product, so to speak. It's $10 and there's tons of materials and things there. But it's really changing the way we deliver our youth sports. It's getting our coaches to focus a little bit more on fun, a little bit more on concepts and individual skills for our kids at those younger ages versus trying to teach, your 9-year-olds, the 1-2-2 or the trap or some system that have no idea what they're doing, right? So results, what's happening with us? So 8 and under, that's the entry point. Here are the new kids that are coming into our sport by percentage at each age level. And then what kids that come back. So for us, we hit about the 90% mark at 11. For us, if they get out of, this is one age category for us. So if you group all this together, it's 51% at 8 and under will retain when we first started this. In our 9 to 14 group, 89%. So that's not too bad at those ages. We have 2.5 times more kids come into our sport at that 8 and under category. So for us, it's really important. That's an entry point. And let's do that level really well and make it very inviting, make it very friendly. Next slide should show you some retention. So 9 to 14, these are our boys population, and we are chinking up. This was a lockout year in the NHL. Anytime the NHL has a lockout or doesn't play, less exposure for our sport, we always seem to drop a little bit. But we are one of the few team sports that's actually growing. Baseball and football and everybody else are in huge decline. So for us, this is really big. So we've changed our retention rate for kids going from 8 to 9 years of age, because that's kind of the cusp of when they really stick with the sport for us, it seems like. So we were at 52% a while ago. Now 60% of everybody. 8% doesn't seem like a lot, but as an NGB, that's a lot. It's a lot of kids. So good for us, and again, we're showing progress where everybody else is declining. And we want this is the goal for our programs, be the best youth sport option in your community. That's what we're preaching to them, and we'll get to a few of those things as we go. The reasons kids choose our sport, and we try and have our clubs make 3 promises to the kids, or to the families. Promise of fun. It's got to be fun because that's the #1 reason kids play. We think we've got a cool venue, unique equipment, and you can skate a lot faster than you can run. Like it's cool. You can whip around the ring. It's fun. And then promise of guidance, instruction, intention. Hockey's complex. It requires learning skills. Kids want to see themselves improve. So, and parents want to see their kids improve. So that's the other promise. And the third one is a promise of achievement. We want that improvement so that parents and the kids can see it, and we think that's really important. So role of the hockey director. We run this 4-day hockey director training program, and I'll give you some of the things that we think are important that it's going to tie in with what Tom said. But this first thing is a little bit of a video. You need to be able to hear this.
When I think back to playing in Southampton, it was all just good times, happy times.
It's a special club. It's spot on in everything they do.
I would sum up my time at Southampton as probably one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life.
Everyone described the club as a family, even if the people changed, the spirit and the philosophy is still the same. Since when I was 9, they looked after me all the way. They really do take care of every step in your career, and for me, it was the best education in football being at Southampton.
Any young player out there that's got the opportunity to join the club can only look at what's been achieved and what players have come through.
In the new training facilities, in the canteen, there's a list of all the successful players that have come through the academy. All you have to do is look at the list, and you'll know it's a great club to be at.
I think it's probably the only club that can keep consistently producing young players like that, and I think it's a credit to everybody at Southampton.
If you can't develop yourself as a football player here, you won't develop anywhere else. And the great thing about our football club is, if you're good enough, you will get a chance in the first team.
I think from 14 they're around the everyday movements of what the first team do, and I think that is one of the main reasons why Southampton do so well at bringing young kids through. The environment's spot on.
They just know how to develop players and never stop, and even if players move on, they have the right.
No, you don't have to repeat. So this was a video that you can Google this, you can get it. It was called The Southampton Way. It's a documentary on a English Premier League football organization. Now, our youth clubs and our people would say we've got nothing in common with a Premiership academy. They spend millions of dollars. It's big. It's all this. And then the smart people in our organizations, they go and watch it and they go, wow, there's all these things that we can actually do. So if you were listening to the words that were said, very little of it was about soccer or football. All of these things, successful, fun, best years of my life, happy times, spirit, proud, family, special club. So what do your players say about your club? What do your ex-players that have moved on say about the club that they played in? What memories are you creating? That for us is really, really important. What we try and sell to our hockey directors is you are selling a culture. Just like as a coach, you have a culture within your team, but you need a culture within your club. And the best clubs that we have are the ones that are connected from start to finish, where they develop a culture within the entire organization. And that's the head coach or the club director, or in our case, the hockey director's job. It's help establish that club culture. It's a lot of work, but if you want your players to be successful, you want your club to grow, you want your, this is it. So, can you describe your club culture? Are your players happy? How do your players develop? Can you quantify it? Can you show families, what do they feel when they come to your organization? What do they feel like when they leave? What was their youth sport experience? Because they will be your biggest salesman out in the world. The best, one of the best recruitment tools we have is bring a friend to hockey, right? It's word of mouth. Tom said it. So it's culture. So are you really running a world-class youth sport program? That's what we want our youth clubs to do. We want to be the #1 youth sport option in your community. That's what we're selling. And if you aren't now, why not? And usually it's because of, well, if I do it this way, we're going to lose players. You tend to cater. A lot of times we see clubs cater to the 1 or 2 players at 8 or 9 that are perceived to be pretty good. And what happens is they change what they do, and then they bleed out 10, 12, 15 kids in the back end because the parents are going, this is kind of whacked. So what do you stand for? Maybe your board doesn't agree with it. Well, you got to get the board online, all those things. And communication is really at the cusp of it. How do you communicate with your membership? How do you communicate with your coaches? USA Hockey, I know the email is not quite the way to go, I guess, but we send these player development newsletters out, but it's by age. So if you're a registered 8 and under player, you get the 8 and under one. If you're a registered 10 and under player, you get the 10 and under one. I do 40 of these a year. And the open rates for our families is over 50% on hundreds of thousands of members. And we get tons and tons of good comments and good feedback because it's about their child. Anytime you can make it personal, direct, is best. And for us, communication's really the key. Marketing, we had a guy out in South Carolina run a club, and we're going to have a free hockey day on Saturday. He made up like 60,000 of these things and sent them out, and he was disappointed that nobody showed up. And we were like, Bill, what are you selling? Like, I'm not bringing my kid. Your kid's going to lose his teeth and have a black eye. That's what you're selling. Exactly. So how you market, it may look cute to you as an insider in the sport, but think about what people that are outside of your sport are going to perceive. So we have to sell some things. We have this 2-and-2 challenge. And this is what we ask our clubs to do. It's really keep 2 more players than you had last year and recruit 2 more players to your program that you didn't have the year before. 4 players. It's not a high, lofty goal, but if you're doing this every year, your club gets bigger. Things grow. Keep the focus small. So retention, we do a couple of different things. We have a retention welcome back week, which we'll talk about in a minute. Acquisition. For us, there's some barriers to our sport, like equipment and some of these other things. So as an NGB, we put about 50,000 sets of starter equipment out into our clubs. Free learn to play gear so that people can come and try the sport. They don't have to buy gear to start.
Your goal for the governing body is to grow the game and get more kids playing. Don't most clubs have a finite number of ice hours that you're limited to great what you can offer?
Yes and no. They can. You can certainly run up to a ceiling, but what we found is most of our clubs aren't close because they don't use their resources well enough. Back in not long ago, we had clubs that were taking their 9-year-olds and we put 15 9-year-olds on the ice and as a team, and they're going to run practice with 15 kids. And they're all over in the corner. And 95% of the surface is not being used. And to teach our sport, you don't need the whole ice surface at those young ages. So putting multiple teams on the ice for your practice sessions and doing some of those things goes back to what we were talking about with our practice and how we change things. But that's able to reduce a cost barrier. It's efficient. There's a bunch of things coaching-wise. It allows me as a youth person within my club to leverage the coaching ability within my club as well. Because I have, in any organization, you can go down to our national team coaches and get them all in a room, and there's a pecking order. There's the best national team coach, and there's the worst national team coach. They all may be in that little upper corner there, but there is a worst one. Well, that's the same with your club. You have a top coach and a bottom coach. So the way we're able to work things in these type of stations and in some smaller groups for some of our practice sessions is share the ice, but leverage our coaching abilities so that if I've got someone that's really good at teaching skating skills, he gets a chance or she gets a chance to work with every kid in that age category versus just his team or her team. So I think that's important too.
So there's, this will be after lunch, but if you would address, because we don't know, as summer sports, how the gold map that NBC did for Sochi for you hit you. Just for everybody's awareness, we're doing a spin-off of the Try Hockey for Free Day, August 27th and September, I think it might even be 27th, but it hasn't been finalized because we're working with NBC, which will drive traffic to the USAV website, and then that'll branch out to the regions, and the regions are choosing how they want it to go directly to a club or whatever. But either way, that's a regional choice. We are asking clubs to do a Try Volleyball for Free Day. USA Volleyball, they'll register on the website of USA Volleyball. It immediately goes to the region. The reason they're registering with us is because we're paying the insurance, so there's no cost for this experiment, of trying the day. And in the winter games, bobsled and skeleton saw 80% of their traffic for the 2 months around the Olympics coming from the NBC television. I've got a blog going up tomorrow called Volley Olympics. As Clinton knows, this is going to be a huge volleyball summer in August because of Brazil and because of the passion that they have for volleyball and because we've got some pretty good teams that are going into this battle. So to take advantage of it, we're working with NBC in this Operation Gold. Now, that's enough for now. But I'd like to hear from you how that impacted you at Sochi because of the...
Okay. We traditionally have a Try Hockey for Free day in February, which hits around the Winter Olympics. We do it every year. We tie it. We have a hockey day across America, and we get the NHL, and NBC does 3 hockey games in a row on that day, and we kind of promote it. And we get about 20, between the 2 days, we're about 26 to 28,000 kids to try hockey for free on those days. And we have a national conversion rate of about 30%. 30% come back and into our sport. That's pretty good, right? They're two big days, one, and they're timed out based on when kids, little kid hockey would start, and then February, it's sort of an end of the year one, but then we keep their email address and get them to come back the next year. But we do a big thing on TV with NBC with it. So it worked pretty well with the Olympics. We had a slight bump, but we've already been doing it. So, sort of the same program. Another thing, it's sort of September for us is kind of when hockey gets started across the country in a lot of locations. Maybe October, depending on where you are in the country. But we do this. It's simple, but ask them to come back. I mean, if you have kids that wander away, make a phone call. Ask them, hey, hockey's starting up. And I have yet to have anyone get mad at us for calling. Oh, geez, thanks. Appreciate that. We're just busy and forgot. Yeah, we'll bring them to the rink. So just ask. We even do some robocalling. We get a NHL player, an American NHL player that's from that particular section of the country, or an Olympian on our female side, to call every girl or every boy, and with a personalized note. And I can't tell you how many phone calls our office takes about, oh my gosh, I deleted Pat Kane's message and we want to save that on the answering machine, and oh, my kid didn't get to hear it. And so it works. It's easy. It doesn't cost very much. And those are things that we've been able to do, and it does make a difference. Personal contact, just picking up the phone. A lot of times they weren't really unhappy. They just kind of forgot about it and wandered away, and you got to work hard at retention. So managing your coaches as a hockey director or a director of your program, safe sport, background checks, code of conduct, what is it that your club adheres to? And this stuff right now, it's the way of the world. Every youth sport organization needs to be doing this with their people because it's what families expect. It's the bottom line given. I expect when I take my child to your sport that your people are screened and we have these things in place. So coordinate coach evaluations. I know Tom talked about it.
Quick question, back on the retention part.
Yeah.
When someone starts out like an 8 and under, how many times a week are they normally going? Is it once a week, twice, 3 times? What is it?
Twice a week is what most programs have.
Okay.
In there. It's twice a week. And we tell our clubs it has to be a set time, and it has to be prime time. It has to be the most convenient. In our sport, you used to hear the horror stories of, well, it's the younger families that got the 5 a.m. ice time or whatever else. No. If you want new people to come in, you make it easy, and we give them the 5:30 after work. Can't be too late because kids have to be in bed, whatever it is. I mean, you make it the very best time slot you can make.
Okay. And the only reason I was asking is our fastest growing club over the last it basically started 7 years ago, is now I think our second largest club in the country. It started from nothing. And one of the things that they do that I think is really interesting is he also runs a lesson program, because swimming is one of the few sports that you can die from if you don't know how to do it right. So he has a small teaching pool, but then next to the competitive pool.
Yes.
And what he noticed with his own kids is that they do Boy Scout once a week, they do religious class once a week, they do music once a week. And he goes, why is it that we in swimming are insisting that kids, when they first start out, commit to 2, 3, or 4 times a week? So he started a once a week thing, and their team has grown outrageously quickly because of that. And it was interesting because I heard him at a clinic, and a coach ask him, well, how many people do you convert from 1 day a week to 3 days at 10 and under? And he literally started laughing. He goes, why do I care? He goes, if I do the math, I make way more money on the once a week kids. If they want to come more, it's great, but they're supporting a lot more of the program now. And it was interesting because there was a lot of argument when I heard him present this from the dyed-in-the-wool hardcore, you gotta swim 3 or 4 days a week as a 10 and under. Well, that would never work for us.
Well, that's a little built into ours as well, a little bit of that. We tell our clubs, it's there. They don't have to come if they don't want it. This comes back to what we're talking about with practice. If it's just my team on the ice on certain days, if I don't have the team, it becomes really difficult for me to do some things in practice. But if I have a couple of teams, 3 teams at 10 and under, for example, and 1 or 2 players have music lessons or whatever, I hardly notice, right? So it doesn't takes the overall cost of ice time and distributes it amongst more people. we're more flexible because if someone is not there, well, we have enough bodies to work on the right concepts and things, and people are happier. And when you give them the opportunity, they just seem to. We have some that once or twice, and others that want more, and we can offer both in the same structure. So why do we care? Yeah. So coordinate coach evaluations. I think staying on top of your coaches is really important, and then recruit like-minded coaches that buy in. Because it's a tough job. Surround yourself with those that are on the same mission as you. Dealing with what we do in youth sports, it's not an easy profession. It's not. And I tell our coaches this all the time when I deal with them. Your job as an age group coach is maybe in a lot of respects more difficult than the guy over here, than Patrick Waugh coaching the Colorado Avalanche, because he's dealing with fully formed adults that they're known commodities. I know what I'm getting, and it's a performance environment. It's pretty easy to just go, I'm paying you, sit over there, and right? Kids, we're trying to develop, nurture, and just when they get to a point where you think you got them figured out, they've changed again, right? So, it's a tough job. Having people on board with you, this is big. Managing. So organization, I don't know you guys, but in our sport, we want our coaches to have a plan, to be highly organized. We want that plan put back to the club. So the club has a record of what people do, and we get to share that information across the board with all of our coaches. That we see it all the time in a lot of our clubs historically. The coach shows up in, at the beginning of the year in September, say, and it's here are your jerseys, here are your pucks. Well, see you in March or when the season's done, and then there's no institutional knowledge if that guy was pretty good. Here we want our coaches working together, sharing information. We do our plans, we email them out and share them by email beforehand. Everyone, if we're doing some stations today, everyone's assigned, they know what they're doing. We're highly organized, and there's a record. And then we can go back as a club, our hockey director can go back and say, okay, well, the Pee-wees, geez, you guys are getting a little bit away from some of the stuff that we as a club think are very important, that you're learning at 12U, because we need you to focus a little bit more on this so that they'll be better prepared at 14. So there's a record. And then this doesn't have to be as complex as this, even if it's just something basic, throw it down and turn it in. So spend time with all your teams. Again, problems arise in your club when individual coaches are running off doing different things, and all of a sudden it's not what the club wanted. So if you're spending time, you're around, you're communicating with each other, that's really important. And then continued development for your coaches. As the leader in the organization, are you feeding them new information? Are you holding social gatherings for them? Hey, get together, we'll have a little round table, we'll have some pizza and talk a little, whatever. Coaches, I don't know too many coaches that don't like getting together and talking about your sport. It's fun. It's kind of what we do, and make it convenient for them. But find ways to give them more information, whether it's emails or whatever. And then their coach ed requirements for us, we got to make sure that every coach in our program has all the right certifications, have taken their online modules, because come December 31st, if they haven't done all that stuff, they're not allowed back on the bench within USA Hockey's structure. So when the referee shows up at the game, you're not certified, So parent partnership, this is the parent information. No parent wants to be told that they need to be educated, so we are changing that as well. And we think it's really important that the more you can communicate with your families, the better off you are, whether it's just about the kids' growth and development, or it's skills that you're going to be practicing, whatever it is. The more communication you do, the better, because what we find is if you're not talking to them, then the parents are off in the stands gathering together and talking about things that they have no idea. And all of a sudden, something that is nothing becomes something of major importance to them, right? So as long as you're keeping them in the loop, things tend to go better. Show that you have a plan for the kids. And we actually have our coaches try, and I think it's on maybe one of the next slides, but give a mid-season report back to the parents. Hey, here's what I think they're doing well, but more important, here's what I think your kid needs to work on over the next 2 years to be a better player. Because nothing in our sports happens overnight. Get the parents in the habit of looking a little bit more than, hey, in the next 3 weeks, they got to make these adjustments. It's like it's going to take some time to develop these skills, to develop these tactics, et cetera. So coordinate those evaluations, communicate by email or in person, however it is, with the parents. And then, social media, what's your social media policy for your program? I think that's really important too. But be organized with it, because that's how people are communicating today. Additional responsibilities of recruiting players, getting them out, whether it's the learn to try hockey for free. And we do kind of bite-size it. So it's try hockey for free, then it's a little bit of a 6-week learn to skate program to get them a little bit more mobile, then into a learn to play program, and have this bite-sized stuff available so you can progress them into your sport and work with your player, your facilities. I don't know what you need for that in our sport. That's kind of big because ice is important. Maximize player development. So how many new players do you need coming in your club for us at 8 and under to sustain your 18 and under team? Because there's going to be some attrition and growth, right? So as a club, are you planning long-term for what's going to happen for you? And you should know what that is. Know what know a little sports science. Know what is most appropriate for kids at each age group. How many players do you need? Teams, how are they going to be divided, et cetera. So how do you group them? Number of on-ice practices, off-ice practices each week. What are you offering? Our best clubs, they kind of spell out on their website exactly what it is that they're going to provide, and then they go out and work really hard to deliver that. And if you can be consistent in those two as a club, your parents are going to be happier. No surprises. You actually follow through on what you say you're going to deliver. What should practice look like, teams, those things, keeping on the coaches. How long should your season be? Different ages, maybe different things. And then execute. It really takes a lot of hard work. None of this is easy, but you ask your players to work hard too. Lots of moving parts, rinks, leagues, board of directors is you got lots on your plate, but pretty rewarding profession, especially when you can get it organized, up and running. You've got a culture, and you see happy families. It's pretty good. So stand for something, be different. What differentiates your club for the next one? And I think Tom started talking a little bit about this, where we get a lot of clubs that are wondering about what the next club is doing. And in our club in town, we've grown considerably, and we tend to have, I think, more happy families. And it's simply because we just go, this is who we are, this is what we do. If you don't want that, go elsewhere. There's other options out there, but this is what you're going to get when you are here. And we stand for this, and we don't worry about the one or two because it's usually your problem children that go someplace else. And a lot of times it's like, hey, door's always open, you can come back. And we see a lot of people go see the grass isn't greener and come back. So know some sports science, have world-class design, be athlete-centered. Develop your coaches into really good age group coaches, and then help parents understand what it is. Because there's no parent handbook. You have a kid, there's no handbook that says this is everything you have to do, And it's the same with youth sports. They want to know more about what they're bringing their child to. So the more you can communicate, the better. Be world leading. And I think I have one thing at the end, because you can't take the coach out of you can't take the coach out of the guy here, so to speak. So I still, this is still a little bit of my identity, and I collect things and try and send things out within our organization, similar to what John does for USA Volleyball. This is a flipboard. I throw in articles and things. This one tends to be a little bit more towards the older age groups, say 15, 16, 17, but there's some good stuff in there. It's case sensitive, but if you go, I just keep storing articles there. probably 100 and something different articles that I find, and I'm sure there's some John Kessel in there someplace, and we send that out. So, any other questions? Yeah.
With the consistency of your program, how do you interlace the beginners, the 8-year-old with your 18-year-old?
Well, some club culture, like we try and get, so a lot of our coaches that we have in our country, they may not be really good technical skill demonstrators, or they can't model anything very well, or they're just a dad or a parent off the street sometimes, because we have some large numbers. So we try and get our older players more involved. Part of some community service is really come back and help out with the younger kids on some things, either before or after a practice. And they're assigned to go once a month to a little kids team. And the kids, they are so much more in tune with that older player than they are listening to you as a coach. It's ridiculous. They watch everything that those kids are doing. And then we also do some things where we'll put on the ice together an older team and a younger team, and we'll practice them together and intermix them for some skill stuff. For example, the older players, they pass the puck harder. They're a lot sharper on what they're doing in their execution. So, there's communication that's going on. You watch the younger kids when they're on the ice with the older ones, and they're intermixed. There's, again, no contact, but their attentiveness and attention to detail goes way up. And then that group gets something from an older group, and there's lots of different things you can do as a club to enhance the development of your players and using the resources that you have. So, yeah. Another question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, what does your support look like directly to the coaches from the national level? What are you doing as far as, I know you said you were doing like magazines for the kids and things like that, but what do you do to support the coaches themselves?
So we have our coach education program that they're required, to go and partake in. But we also I have a staff of people that are regionally located around the country that will go to clubs and work directly with their coaches for a day, 2 days, come back and see them again. We tend to go where we're asked to go. It's a big country and there's 2,000 clubs. And some clubs just like, hey, look, it's nice, we don't want you around, Others, they can't get enough of us. So it's kind of feed the ones that want to be fed. And our staff is out, on a regular basis. And we do, 200 days, each of our regional managers, probably 200, 250 days a year that they're in a club working directly with somebody. So, another question?
I just want to know if you're representing the NCVA. Oh, okay.
No, I got it.
They really.
And I want to kind of echo what Ken mentioned, that we, swimming, again, it's one of the funny things that we discovered by accident, that we also have a field staff. And it was interesting because a little while ago, about a year or two ago, we got our field staff together and they were like trading great kind of, even though it's totally different sports, but the issues they were dealing with were virtually identical.
Well, and what we really liked about their breakup was they had wet side, dry side. So for us, that kind of was like, well, frozen side, dry side. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And we don't have the dry side. Our wet side, so to speak, are doing both, but they're probably better suited for just the wet on ice side of the staff that we have in place. So we're trying to figure out how we can incorporate some of what swimming's doing. Every time we get together, it's good stuff.
Yeah, the reality is, as you heard, at one end you've got the NHL, which we don't even have a pro league in our country for men or women. And at the other end, swimming has had two $20+ increases in their fees that go to the national office. So right now, $54, I think you said, goes to the national office, and we get 20. And what the reason they did that was, yeah, we're going to go up by significant. I think you did a all at once $25
well, yeah,
increase.
We were at, in 2003, it became known as, 2003, we were at $25 to the national fee. And what it was an immediate increase of $15, then $1 a year for 10 years. But what it got known in our convention is double the dues, which really wasn't the greatest selling thing. But the interesting thing is that there was a lot of pushback about, well, what are we going to get for our money? And what was interesting is that our executive director did kind of a trust me, and we developed some task forces on how to spend the money. And actually the interesting part is, in the task force, we've done literally everything that we said we were going to do with the increase. So we did put it back in terms of programs and things back to the clubs. And our whole division of club development came about as that dues increase, because again, we saw that we weren't serving clubs as best we could. And so we now have, I think, 18 full-time and 3 contractors in our club development division that's specifically to go out and serve and work with clubs.
Now, our dues are $40 for members. It's first year, 6 and unders are always free. First year, 8 and under is free, the first year into the program. And then roughly $5 of our 40 goes back to our affiliate branches that help run things a little bit more locally. And a good chunk of ours is insurance for kids. We do have unbelievable, it's unfortunate, but we have had some severe incidents in our sport where someone is tripped up, slid into the boards, and become paralyzed. And USA Hockey has basically written the $2 million check, and and then come back and supported families, long term. So we think that's important. Sad, but we need to stand by it. So that's a big chunk of the 40 that's in there.
Any last questions? Unfortunately, are you guys going to be able to stay? I think you were thinking about staying. Obviously, we want you to be here for lunch with us. But what we're going to do now is break for a lunch. And because of that, Lauren, I guess we'll just take you to the airport and fly you home. Is that okay? What we'll do is we'll meet afterwards, after the lunch break right now, and a chance to talk to Tom and talk to Lauren and Tom Pingle's here. Doug will be, Beal's coming by about 2 to join in for some of the talking. But we'll go next to lunch, and then we'll go to Lauren after the half-hour break for lunch. It's right now 12:25, so we'll reconvene at 1, so in 35 minutes. I think we've got lunch back there, right? Or okay. Ken, Tom, officially we present you your own beach volleyball. Don't let the dog get it. Take it home. Grow a volleyball for us. We appreciate it. And some awesome stuff you've shared. Thank you very much.